Was smoking a way for you to cope with that tough time in adolescence when you wanted to belong and you were overwhelmed emotionally? That's how Kimberly picked up smoking too. Kimberly walks us through her physical and emotional reactions to quitting and how she was able to stay on her path through self-reflection and redirection. Enjoy her story here on the You Can Quit Smoking podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so excited to be here with you today and with Kimberly. Kimberly, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
My name is Kimberly Conte, and I am a first-time author of a memoir, and I'm also a cold turkey quitter from smoking.
Right on, talk to us about your experience. What was smoking like for you? What's your story with smoking?
Gosh, I started smoking, I think, when I was probably 11, 12, maybe. My mom was a smoker, and she smoked ultralights, I think, for most of my life. She still smokes now to this day. So she's been smoking for a long time. And I started smoking just because she said it relieves stress, and my parents had just gotten divorced, and I didn't fit in anywhere at school. I was being bullied and things like that. So I'd go home and I'd steal her cigarettes and just start smoking them, see if what she said was true. And instead of it being true, it kind of just became a habit and the cool thing to do. And I noticed it was getting attention. So I just kept kind of doing it. And then, I got pregnant really young with my son, 18, and I quit briefly while I was pregnant. And then as soon as I had my son, I started smoking again. If I could smoke, I could get away. And, when I had my son and my son was young and my mom and I were really getting along. And I think that it was a mental thing for me, more than anything else. And I had it my whole life around me, my whole life, it was something that was normal. So when you grow up with something normal, it's really hard to try to change your brain.
Yeah.
And, the only reason I quit smoking cold turkey when I was pregnant is because I was pregnant and I had a reason to, you know what I mean? And after I had my son, I didn't have a reason to. Probably it was 10, 15 years ago, I think. And I was making my bed. I got winded. I bent down to do the hospital corners on my bed and I got winded and I was like, oh, hell no. Like, but, and I went and I talked to my husband. I was like, I'm getting winded. I'm like, is that normal? I'm like, I'm 30 years old. I'm like, it's not right. I shouldn't be getting winded. And he's like, I don't know. Because he was a smoker too. So, I mean, my main concern, and it's going to sound really stupid and really shallow, but my main concern with quitting smoking was the weight gain. Because most people, when they quit, they gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a female, we already have enough issues as it is with weight.
Yeah.
And with, how we look. We don't need anything else contributing to it. So that was one of the major reasons I didn't want to quit for a long time, because I was afraid I was going to gain the weight. And I'm not a small person, but I'm not huge. They call them sporty. You know what I mean? Like I played softball and stuff when I was a kid. So I grew up with the athletic type figure and broad shoulders, really broad shoulders. So anytime I put weight on, my shoulders would get real big and I'd look like a linebacker. I had a real hard time, like I said, in school, being made fun of and stuff. So that was my biggest concern, was like my weight gain. But when I got winded, I'll tell you what, I remember it. It was, I think, December 28th. And I told my husband, every year we make one New Year's resolution. People make 10, 15, they never work. You got to make one. And he was like, what are you going to do? And I said, well, you know what? I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm getting winded making the bed. I'm getting winded going in. Our house is 2 bedrooms. It wasn't huge. And I'd get winded going down the hallway.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm like, and if that's not what the problem is, then I'll go back to smoking. That was my New Year's resolution. He was supposed to quit with me, of course. Women always do things first. He didn't do it until 10 years later. But at 11:58, I lit my last cigarette on December 31st. As soon as 12 o'clock hit, I handed it to my husband and I was done. For me, a lot of people, it's holding the cigarette is what the addiction is for them. It's having something in their hand. For me, it was more of like I'd gotten comfortable with it because it was always what I went to when I felt alone or when I was scared, when I needed comfort. I went to smoke. That's what I did. So that's kind of what it was with me, and did gain weight, but at the same time, with the same token, I'm one of those people where I'm stubborn just because of how my parents were when I was growing up. I learned how to take that stubbornness and that I'm not going to do it and put it into I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And be stubborn the opposite way, kind of. Because let me preface, I have ADHD and dyslexia. So I'm also very short of attention span. But I turned it, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show, nobody thought I could do it, because who thinks you're going to quit? I mean, everybody's like, I'm going to quit smoking. Nobody ever really does. I'm like, I'm going to be the first one to watch me do this. You know what I mean? And I was tempted once, 2 weeks after I quit, to smoke. My husband actually handed me a cigarette and was like, light this for me. Not even thinking I'd quit, not even remembering like, oh, she doesn't smoke anymore. Because everybody we knew smoked. I went to go do it and I'm like, wait, no, I can't do it. My guys, because if I do that, I got to start all over. And I think the only reason it didn't bother me so much is because I knew that I'd started chewing. Well, not the chewing gum. Don't start chewing gum because it's bad too. Because bad for your teeth. But that's what I started doing to try to figure out how I was addicted to it and like what it was, why I wanted to go back to it. Because it was still there. I still wanted to do it. I'm so stubborn that like I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna prove these people wrong. And I think for me, it was just about mentally for me to retrain my brain. I had to be okay with fitting in and accepting myself as I was because I gained 25 pounds. And then went a little bit more, because once you're, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 45. Once you hit 30 and then you get to 35, it doesn't matter what you do. A lot of women, it just kind of creeps up on you.
Yeah.
And then, smoking don't help. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
But by the time the weight gain, I started with a couple more pounds. I had already gotten myself believing and comfortable with I could breathe. And I will tell you, after it was about 3 months, I wasn't winded anymore. I mean, it took a while. It took a while because I don't know what you smoke, but depending on what you smoke too, it can take a while for your body to physically adjust.
Definitely.
Yes, to catch up with it. Because I mean, my husband quit cold turkey 2 years ago, and he still is like, after he eats, he's like, I want a cigarette. I don't even have that temptation or that craving anymore. And I think it's because there were different reasons behind why he smoked and why I smoked. It was more for me like, dude, I'm 30 something years old and I can't. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
More
You know what I
pressing.
mean?
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know how that worked for you, but I mean, it's like I started chewing gum and I started tapping. Every time I was like I tap on something or I tap on a pen or something like that, it drives my husband crazy. I still do it, but it drives me crazy. But it's like I don't have the cravings anymore. But every once in a while, like I just notice myself like something will happen, and it's like in the back of your head. It's like it's always there. And I want to say that that's the best way to do it. You said you did it cold turkey. Best way to do it. As hard as it may be, I mean, they say it takes basically 30 days for you to retrain your brain or for you to, break a habit and form a new one. It takes 30 days. That's true. It does. And if you can do that, if you can tell yourself each day, just today, go day by day by day, it makes it a lot easier. Because if you go from like smoking to like the gum, like to Nicorette or to, something like that, it's the same thing. All you're doing is just not blowing out smoke. You're still putting the same stuff in your body. You're still going to have the same issues. It's just you're not being rude and blowing smoke into somebody's face and they're not inhaling your smoke. So those don't work. I mean, in my opinion, it's more damage to your body. I mean, the point of quitting smoking is to get healthier, not to change one for the other. And I think that everybody falls down. I did not. Luckily, I mean, I quit. I was done. But a lot of people have stopped. They start, they stop, they start. And I think it's just a matter of that retraining your brain. To retrain it, it's one thing at a time. Like, if your issue with smoking is you've got to have something in your hand. My husband he would get like those little spinners. Mm-hmm. And he'd spin it. And for me, it was like a pen. I just start tapping my nail or something. Like I can tell you that I'm really glad I did quit smoking. I'm healthier now. I can't say that it didn't cause any long-term damage because we don't know that. We just don't know. But I mean, it changes your personality. It's not like a drastic change. I mean, I don't know if yours changed at all, but like I want to say you're easier with things. Like when you to understand things, you know what I mean? Like things are easier, and that's what's kept me from going back. Is just the realization of like, certain traits and certain things that you do, there's a clarity to it when you don't have that cloud of smoke above your head. My son didn't smoke. He tried it once. And pardon me, I'm going to say a backwards way of children, doing this. Like if somebody had come up to me when I was a kid and had said, you want to smoke? Here's a pack of cigarettes, smoke the whole thing. I probably never would have done it because you smoke one after the other and chimney smoke. Oh my God. That's what I made my son do. My son was like, I want to do it. I was like, okay, here you go. Here's what your lungs look like. And those commercials like, oh, just say no to drugs, just say no. They don't work. Yeah, they're using kids, but you don't relate. How are they going to relate to that? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Each person's different. Each person's chemical balance is different. The reasons for why they're doing it is different. You've got to attack it with quitting and with like young ones wanting to start it, this kind of with the same attitude. And I don't like hypocrites either. So it's like when I quit, I was done. Like, and my mom, she smoked, I would say she's 75. She started smoking when she was like 21, I think, 50 something years. Not a problem in the world. I mean, not a breathing problem, not cough, nothing. Whereas someone else I know died of emphysema from smoking and ended up with, they drank too, but they ended up with cirrhosis and, emphysema, and that what killed them. And being around that, it changes you. The day-to-day struggles you were saying earlier, anybody needs to talk, whatever like that. Sometimes it's good. I think like they have, the buddy system for women, like, to check everyone. I think they need it for smokers. And I know it sounds stupid, but AA has their own group. NA's got their groups. I don't think that anybody realizes how serious smoking is. They talk about it, but I don't think they realize how serious it is. I mean, it's so serious that like they found an alternative way to for people to continue smoking. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, vaping, smoking.
Yeah.
It's just electronic.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. And I think that the easiest way to not do it is to have a buddy or to have a system where you can reach out and say, hey, what can I do instead of, smoke, and it's not just like go for a run or read books or something like that. It's just like pick up a phone and call your friend
Right.
for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Talk it through, or watch TV for half an hour, or 10 minutes or whatever. Just, get your mind to focus on something else. It's easier, most definitely, when you have somebody to help you with it.
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. If you're listening to these stories and feeling like your own journey is stuck in a loop of broken promises, please know you do not have to do this alone. I currently have some spots available for one-on-one coaching. I work with people to help them move out of the cycle of smoking and into a life where they finally feel in control. We use a heart-led framework to address the deeper patterns so that your success is actually sustainable. If you are ready to commit to the work, apply now at honoryourheart.net/application. I would love to support you on your way to reconnecting to yourself and moving past smoking for good. Now, back to the story.
But you can't do it expecting to not fall. And I think that's where a lot of people, you said you had to try a couple times as well. Cause you had a hard time.
Many times.
See? And I mean, and did you go into it expecting to just be done with it?
Probably in the beginning, and then it started getting to the point where I didn't even think I could do it. I was just kind of going through the motions. And then I got to the point like, oh, I'm definitely doing this. And I did. So
yep. And that's good. But I mean, I think a lot of people, they go into it like with the expectation of they're not going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
They need to expect to fail. And that's, I think, the biggest misconception. Everybody says, oh, no, you want to do this. No, you don't want to go into it saying, I'm going to do it. You need to go in expecting to fail, expecting to fall, and expecting to have to do it again. Because if you don't, then when you do fall, because everybody falls like once or twice. Like, when I was pregnant, I quit and I started again after I had my son. So I'd quit more than once. But I mean, every time you need to expect to fall because nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? And nicotine's a drug. It's a drug. It's addicting. And I mean, you can't expect to just stop it and everything's okay. Your body's going to go through withdrawals, and some people it's worse than others. Me, I coughed up a lot of stuff for 30 days. Like, I mean, I was coughing, like hacking stuff up. It was just gross. But my husband, and I gained weight. He didn't. He didn't cough. He didn't gain weight. He just quit. And I'm like, oh, lucky you. It messed with him mentally. Me, I didn't realize how serious it was until I would start coughing up stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. But once you get past, like, I think it's the first 7 days. I don't know if that was for you. Once I got through that 7 days, I started to feel a little better. Like, I was totally like, just like sludge, just dragging the first like week. But literally after like the first week or so, I started to feel a little bit better, little by little by little. And it is mental. But if you're competitive, the best way to do it is to look around you and just tell yourself, you know what, if I do it, I'm getting the gold. I'm number one, beat me. You know what I mean? And that's how I kind of looked at it. I played softball, and so I was competitive. I'm like, for once, I'm not going to come in second. I'm going to come in first. And that's how I kind of pushed myself to the end of it. Because it was hard. It was difficult because everybody in my life smokes. I mean, even now, everybody smokes except for me and my husband. All our friends still do. And it's not just the quitting. It's the being able to be around it after you do it and not want to do it. And that was where I struggled. See, the quitting wasn't the problem. It was being around people that were doing it and not wanting to take the cigarette out of their hand and smoke it.
Yeah.
That's where the problem came in with me. That's when it's a social thing. And it's like to fit in. And I was bullied a lot as a kid, which is why I started smoking. Right. I was picked on. I'm a redhead. I moved to Arizona when I was 9, started in 3rd grade. I was the only kid in the school with red hair. And of course, my mother, at that time, Pippi Longstocking was the show to watch when you got home from school and everything. And being I had red hair, she sends me to school in braids. So I had kids come back behind me, holding my hair up, and I'd go home crying. So that was like my way to kind of fit in and be one of the cool kids was to have, oh, she's got cigarettes, because I'd take them from my mom. That was my thing. And that was the hardest thing for me, was to just be okay with not fitting in. And I think it is hard, most definitely, but as long as it's not just a mental thing, it is a physical thing, because your body gets accustomed to doing things. If you tell yourself your leg hurts and you tell yourself that 1,000 times, when you stand up, your leg's going to hurt, and that's the mental part of it. But it's like the physical part of it is every time you go and you breathe that in, it's like every single fiber in your body is holding on to that little piece. And when it doesn't have it, when it's so used to having it for a while, it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? But that after the smoke clears, so to speak, I don't know how to describe it. If it's like calmness or if it's like, I always said it was part of my brain opened up. You know what I mean? I think it's just like an overall relaxing feeling after you haven't smoked for a while. You process things different. Your body processes things differently. And I want to say high strung, but it's not really high strung. It's kind of like that's a symptom of the drug you're doing, which is nicotine. It's most definitely hard. And I have listened to your show. I've listened to it quite a few times, actually. I do like it. I have to say, you know, if you'd been around 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think you getting down to the real of it, and like, I think if you can figure out why you start smoking, because you got to trace it back, because it's just like everything else. You can't quit till you're ready. I don't think anybody can quit if they don't know why they started. And that can take a lot, which is, it's in the book I wrote as well, too, because it's about my journey through bullying, and, you know, what I did and the partying and all that stuff I did. And it's in there, too. I mean, you know, you have to go back to the root of what caused it in order for you to be able to just be done with it and not do it again, I think is what it is. And I don't know if that worked for you, but
Yeah. And,
you know,
and I think it's part of like meeting our needs, because if we don't know what we need, then it's hard to go without when we're used to going to smoking to meet that need, or at least we think it does. So I'm curious about the comfort. You mentioned that, you know, when you're feeling lonely, you're feeling on the outs, it's something that you would turn to comfort yourself, to soothe yourself. What have you done to replace that? How do you meet that need now?
well, funny you should ask. I have dogs.
Nice.
I always loved animals, but I just kind of substituted dogs. I have 6.
Wow.
That's what kind of what I did. I'm not saying go out and get a bunch of dogs by any means, but I'm saying, you know, like that's what I did to comfort myself. And I did a lot of, if you go back to the reason that you started and you can, I don't want to say dissect it, but if you work backwards to why you started and then you work through the reason that made you start in the first place, you won't need to worry about that comfort that I was looking for, because you will have figured out how or why it made you do that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I had to go back to the original reason I started. And it was for attention, and it was, my mother said, relieve stress. So I was like, okay, well, if it makes her feel good and she's not stressed, then yeah, it works for me. And then it became about when I would get upset at school, I would come home and I'd go out back, steal my mom's cigarettes, and I'd smoke a cigarette or two, and like, okay, maybe this will work. And then it started, kids at school would be like, you smoke, you know, and then it was getting friends and being the one that, oh, she got sick. And I had to go all the way back there, you know, in my head and figure out what triggered me to start it in the first place. And then once I did that, I was like, you know what? That was just dumb, because I was never, you know what? I didn't need to do that. I'm a good person. I mean, you know, I'm smart. It's kind of like self-reinforcement, build myself back up again to be like, why would I do that when you know, I'm smart, I'm pretty. I mean, you know, and I've got a son, I've got a husband, you know, I mean, I've got all this. Why would I do something like, you know, if I'd known then what I was going to walk into and what kind of life was going to have my son and my husband, you know, I wouldn't have done it. I did it, I think, because I was scared I wasn't going to have all that, and I wasn't good enough to have all that.
Yeah. And I think it helps us forgive ourselves too. Like you said, like, because I used to do that all the time. I used to be like, why did I start smoking? And I was always angry with myself for making that choice, which is really silly, because you have a choice every time you light up. You know, it's not back when I was 12, it's right now. So going back and understanding why we did it can help us have compassionate understanding to like, hey, this is, you know, a younger version of me, didn't know what she was doing. And you can forgive that part of yourself so that you can move on from that thought loop. Because I was stuck there forever. That was my narrative, like, oh, poor me, I made this bad choice. And I was able to finally move on from that. So I think that's really powerful. And to build yourself back up, like you said, to go back to that pain and work through it.
It is. And, you know, and you got to remember, like, and like I said, you know, at the beginning, a lot of people say that they don't want to quit because they don't want to gain the weight. Yeah. Well, you know what? If you can gain it, you can lose it. You know, a lot of people say, well, it's a habit, I'm used to it. Okay, well, it takes 30 days to start a habit and to break a habit. Go walk a mile every day. Go walk around your block. And it's just little things like that. By no means am I saying go put down a cigarette and pick up, you know, pick up a bottle or something like that. No way. I'm saying like after the first week or whatever, because you got to give yourself a couple of days when you first quit, because you're going to feel like you're just going to be sledging around. I mean, you're going to be irritated. You're going to be angry, short-tempered. I mean, and everybody is, because it's, again, a chemical that your body's detoxing from. But once those couple days are up, chew gum. I mean, you know, suck on candy. I mean, go walk around the block. You know, I mean, there's other things you can pick up if you have to do that. If it's something that you absolutely have to do, you have to have that habit, or you have to be, you know, have your head go to a certain space. There's so many other things you can do to teach yourself to just not even think of the smoking.
Absolutely.
Yep. And girl, I tell you what, I'm not walking around the block.
Yeah. I always wanted to be a runner. I had to give that up. That wasn't changing.
Yeah. Yep. I'm like, I'm not walking around the block, but you know what I mean? But like, I think the older you get though, the easier it gets too, because like I chewed gum when I first quit all the time. I was like the New Yorker, gnawing on the gum, like, oh my God. Always had the water gum in my mouth. Somebody was like, don't do that. That looks horrible. I'm like, okay. So I spit that out and I start tapping.
Oh.
And I realized as you get older, you just kind of start like, I could be doing this instead of that. Once you quit smoking and your body actually clears, the more productive side of your brain starts working more. Because believe it or not, when you smoke, that's the side of your brain that that it kills the brain cells on. And I didn't know that until a doctor had told me that it affects a certain part of your brain. I'm like, oh.
And the creativity too.
Yep. Yes, it does. When you can have a creative thought, you're just like, what? When you haven't had one before, you haven't been able to put a whole one together like I couldn't. It's like, the first one I had, I was like, whoa. I tried it. I failed. But hey, I'm not a decorator. I thought I was. First creative thought I had was to decorate something, and it didn't work out well. But I mean, I had a thought. I didn't have a thought like that for 20 years. You know what I mean? But it's not easy. And I think anybody that quits, they down themselves if they go back, if they fall off that train. And if they fall down, they're like, damn, I could have quit. I didn't quit. I failed. Wrong way to go into quitting. That's totally the wrong way to do it. Like I said, don't set yourself up to fail. Set yourself up to know you're going to fail. At least once or twice, especially with smoking, because it's one of the more serious addictions out there. Very few people do it the first time and are done. I've never met anybody that's done it the very first time and never done it again. I think I met one person one time that smoked a cigarette once, and I was like, wow, okay. Never did it again. And they're like, no, just have a cigarette, and that was it. I was done. I was like, kudos. I think they need to be more proud of themselves. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to know I smoke. I smell like it. Check it out. The smoke goes away. You quit for 30 days, wash your clothes, the smoke goes away. And you'll start to be able to smell it. When I could smell it after I quit, after like 2 months, the first time I smelled smoke, like when I walked in my house, I almost threw up. I was like, this is what people walked into every time they came over. Oh my God. And this is what my clothes smelled like. I think that was a big thing for me too, is like, I didn't realize how bad it smelled until after you quit. And you don't notice it right away. It's not something that you notice right away when you quit smoking. They say like 60 or 90 days before your body can actually recognize the smell. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah, keep up that motivation for sure. And that's some great advice in there too about, being real with yourself about what to expect when you quit and being okay with it taking some practice, taking some work, and having to keep at it. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm wondering, can you talk to us more about your book and how people can get in touch with you?
Sure. The name of my book is actually Who Am I Really? Do You Know? And as funny as it sounds, it's actually about growing up and like being bullied and how I got through it, because I spent a lot of years alone in my room, didn't really have a lot of friends, just kids are cruel. And I wrote it because I was watching the news one night, entertainment news actually, and there was a child actor that had taken his own life, and he was like, we say 18 or 19, I think. And I started bawling. And they said it was because he was depressed because they were making fun of him on set or something like that. And I was just like, that should never, ever be a road anybody goes down, let alone a child or a young adult, ever. Because as hard as it gets, you've got to remember that there's always somebody that's been there, always somebody that'll be able to help you. And that's the reason I wrote it, was so that people know I don't have a lot of money. I don't live in a huge house, but I've been there, I've done that, and I made it through. And if I could do it, anybody can do it. And that way, maybe if it helps one person, then that's all I can ask for. You can get it on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble online for ebooks. You can get it on Barnes & Noble as well, too.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for coming on, for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate you being open and talking about some of the struggle you went through, how you found solutions. Just want to thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Take care, everyone. See you next week. A lot of us, like Kimberly, had a hard time as young people trying to navigate the transition out of childhood into adulthood. That was part of Merity's story as well. Merity went on to work on her emotional healing in conjunction with cold laser therapy to quit smoking for good and find purpose in helping others out of addiction. Listen to Merity's story in episode 16 of You Can Quit Smoking. Thank you for listening.